Timothy was walking alone along a beach. It was probably his favorite place to be whenever he found himself in solitude. There was something about the wind and the gentle sound of the waves going in and out that always made him feel at ease. And so, on warm days, such as this day, Timothy always found himself, one way or another, by the seashore. Sometimes not even on purpose. You see, Timothy had a habit of falling into daydreams. He would wonder a lot about things. Little things that most people would usually consider useless to think about, but he would just keep wondering and wondering, trying to find an answer. Like, why do some people prefer the color blue over the color red? Or why do rainy days make some people sad? But the questions that he could never find answers to always seemed to be his favorite to think about. One such question was, what is it that makes some people good and some people bad? What makes some people do bad things and other people not? And why is it that people always tend to think ill of those who are related to people who have done bad things, even if they have not done so themselves? These were questions that Timothy thought about a lot. He figured if he found an answer, it would somehow make his life feel less lonely. Timothy's mother got sick and passed away shortly after giving birth to him. So he lived with his father until he was around 6 years old when he moved in with his aunt and uncle, after his father was arrested. They wouldn't tell Timothy the reason his father was arrested, only that he had done something bad. Often, this conversation would end with Timothy's aunt going on about how she had always told her sister that being with Timothy's father was a foolish idea and so on. Timothy would just sit quietly as his aunt stood up and continued with her housework, all while rambling on, completely forgetting Timothy was there, eventually saying how resentful she and her husband were having to take care of the child of that horrible man. Being as young as he was, Timothy didn't remember much about his father, only that he usually felt afraid around him. For as long as he could remember, Timothy had a scar on his right cheek in the shape of a cross. This was another thing his aunt and uncle would never reveal any information about, and this left Timothy always wondering about its origins. But from the way his father would always somehow come up shortly after in their conversation, Timothy suspected his father had something to do with it. Wherever he went, Timothy's past always seemed to follow him. The kids at school seemed to avoid him physically, but their eyes never seemed to leave him alone. He could always feel them staring, but when he would turn around, they would always conveniently find something else to look at. He was always seen as the kid whose father was a criminal, and the obvious scar on his face always served to start more and more rumors. From the constant whispering and staring from the kids, the cautious looks from teachers, and the hateful glares from his aunt and uncle, it seemed that everyone knew more about Timothy than he did himself. It was frustrating to be kept in the dark about his own life, but it isolated him more than anything. It was only on these walks to the beach did Timothy ever feel somewhat relaxed. When Timothy noticed this, he found it odd that he would find comfort in being alone, when his whole life seemed to only be filled with isolation. But Timothy quickly found the answer to that bit of wondering, as he found loneliness wasn't a matter of being left alone. Real loneliness was being in a room full of people who didn't want you to be there. Out here on the beach, all he felt was acceptance, by the spring wind that swirled around him in a hug, and by the gentle sound of the water speaking to him in such a calm manner. Timothy lifted his head after realizing how far he had walked. He looked behind him and saw nothing but his endless trail of footprints. Up ahead, he saw a shack of some kind. He had clearly walked farther than ever before. He walked over to the shack and saw it was clearly abandoned and practically crumbling. He took a peek inside and found that it was filled with shelves full of dust-covered glass bottles. Tall ones, short ones, round ones, square ones. He also noticed a stack of yellowing paper and a cup of chewed-on pencils. It seemed as though someone had built a clubhouse by the sea to send messages in bottles. Timothy immediately took a mental note that he should definitely wonder why someone would build such a place, and why it had been abandoned. It would be another useless thing to wonder about during his walks. He ventured inside the shack and lightly touched the bottles before seeing one that took his interest. It wasn't fancy. As a matter of fact, it was quite plain. But there was something familiar about it that Timothy couldn't quite put his finger on. He picked it up and went over to the stack of paper that was set upon a splintering table. There was something just so charming and mysterious about sending a message out to the sea without ever knowing who may receive it. Timothy grabbed the least chewed-on pencil he could find and began writing. He was surprised at how easily the words came to him as he wrote sentence after sentence. Once he was finished, he gently rolled up the aging paper and stuck it in the bottle. He quickly looked around the shack, and sure enough, there was a stash of corks stored in a barrel. He searched around a bit to find one that would fit the neck of his bottle, and once he did, he quickly stuck it into the bottle and pushed it down as far as he could. The message in the bottle was now tightly sealed. He did it quickly, without thinking, because he knew that if he gave it too much thought, he would probably become embarrassed by what he wrote and change his mind. With his bottle in hand, he left the shack to find an appropriate place to release the bottle. Up ahead, he quickly spotted a short pier. It was very short, more of a dock really. So short in fact that Timothy wondered why someone would bother building such a thing on the ocean, as it would certainly be completely submerged during high tide. But at this moment, the tide was quite low. It was going out to sea, which Timothy found convenient for letting a message in a bottle go. He walked over to the dock and carefully walked across it. With its broken boards and rickety frame, the dock seemed pretty old, though it could also have simply been from the abuse of getting submerged in the ocean every day. Timothy reached the end of the dock and squatted down. He looked at the bottle in his hands for a moment, before gently releasing it into the waves. At that moment, the wind blew out to sea, as though telling Timothy that it and the ocean would take care of his message now. Timothy watched the bottle as it drifted farther and farther away, until his eyes finally lost track of the little bobbing bottle. He stood up and continued looking out to sea, now realizing why writing the message seemed to come so easily. Rather than writing a message for sending, he wrote a message that he, had he found a message in a bottle, would have wanted it to say. He smiled as he turned around and began his careful trek back over the rickety dock. It was getting late. The sun would probably be down much before he reached home. His aunt would probably give him quite a scolding too. But Timothy didn't care. He couldn't help but smile, and it felt so good to do so. This little adventure had given Timothy a lot more to wonder about. But whenever he would wonder about the things that happened on this day, he knew that it would bring a smile to his face. He hoped that his message would do the same for whoever ended up finding his little whisperer from the sea. Hello everyone, it's Zaccura. I just wanted to thank you all so much for watching, and also give a big thank you to Jasmine Todd for doing this collab with me. I had so much fun with it. And for those of you who don't know what the heck I'm talking about, here's the rundown. So for our collab, Jasmine and I decided to do this sort of two-part story where we both write and draw half of the same story. So in part 1, which is the video you just watched, my part, I wrote and drew the story of my character Timothy, who writes a message and sends it out to the sea. And in part 2, Jasmine's video, you'll find out who ends up finding the bottle and reads the message. So be sure to go and check out her video to see the conclusion of this story. Now, as you may imagine, this collab took quite a bit of planning and chatting between Jasmine and me, just throwing ideas at each other and piecing things together. But in the end, I think what we ended up creating together ended up being very special, and is one of the most unique artist collabs I've seen on YouTube. So I'm very thankful to be part of it. I had so much fun writing the message in the bottle and coming up with Timothy's story, as well as painting this picture, and Jasmine did just such an incredible job with her side. I absolutely love what she came up with for her character. So again, be sure to check out her part of the collab and give her thumbs ups and subs, because her artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. I sort of fell in love with her artwork the moment I found her channel, so yeah, go show her some love. At this point in the video, I was planning on talking a bit more about the specifics of how I felt about this painting and writing the story, but it would make this video too long, so I just decided to write all that down and put it in the description box. So if you're curious about all that, yeah, you can go and check that out. And that brings me to the end of this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Jasmine, for doing this with me. I hope you had as much fun as I did. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. As always, the links to my social media pages are in the description box where you can follow me for daily updates. Jasmine's video and YouTube page are linked in the description box as well, so you can go and check out her work there. And until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!